Welcome back to Every Third House by Margery Frisbie. Chapter 15. The rotini did taste great with the spices caught in the curls, as Grandma put it. Tracey lingered at the table, nibbling on a brownie, even though her mind was on Robert Lincoln. She knew Grandma liked the company. Did you know that as soon as Mary Lincoln was committed to the sanatorium in Batavia, that's not far from here, people started trying to get her out? That was hard on Robert. I always wondered about Mary Lincoln, Grandma interrupted. I didn't know she was in Batavia. Did you, James? They've got that big windmill there. Grandpa surreptitiously dunked his molasses cookie into his tea. Now, James. Not much escaped Grandma's eagle eye. Tastes so good, Grandpa muttered into his teacup. I saw that windmill on a bird hike, Tracey said, in a big park beside a river. The only time I saw a chestnut-sided warbler. No one could identify it. A warbler? Grandma couldn't believe a birdwatcher wouldn't know a warbler. Well, some kind of a warbler, Tracey explained. Later I saw one, stuffed, at the Field Museum. Don't like the idea of a bird stuffed. Grandma was on a new track now. Or kids stuffed in houses. You know, Jim, she said to Grandpa, I didn't see any kids on the street when I took Tracey to the hospital. She turned to Tracey. Kids owned the streets when we were kids. Didn't they, Jim? She prodded Grandpa into joining the conversation. Gracious, we couldn't wait to get out after doing the supper dishes. Grandma waved the teapot questioningly at Grandpa. Remember, Jim? She repeated, determined, it seemed to Tracey, to get a response out of her husband for once. Remember kick the can? Grandpa refused to let himself be carried away. Nevertheless, Tracey could detect a glimmer of recollection play about the corners of his mouth as he raised his cup for a refill. Was a barrel of fun, he admitted. Grandma's eyes glinted at the concession. You can't imagine how it absorbed us. Grandma turned to Tracey. We'd wait all day for the world to be ours alone. It's funny to say that kicking a can in an alley behind a bunch of two-flats could be magical. But it was. The half-dark, maybe huddling with some other kid in a store window well. Sneaking out to release the caught kids with a good kick at the can. Edgy because you might be caught and have to be it. Alone in the dark, peering down gangways for kids, never knowing when someone might jump out. You could be pretty scared when a gate banged or a cat ran past your feet. Grandma shivered. Scared cat, Grandpa murmured into his tea. What was that, Jim? Grandma pushed the plate of brownies towards him. Come on, confess. You loved it as much as I did. Remember Jerry hitting Lou with the can? Chief lie, cheat, steal, Grandpa said under his breath. That's not nice, Grandma remonstrated. That's what we called him, Grandpa insisted. Not me. This is about as much as I've ever heard them say about their childhood, Tracey realised, forgetting Robert Lincoln in this amazing byplay in her kitchen. That may be what you called him, Grandma was saying, but he was more fun than almost anybody. You never knew when he'd shoot down the alley and boot that can onto Zilcher's porch. Grandma turned wide-eyed to Tracey. That's what terrified me when I was it. Zilchers were the neighbourhood ogres. They kept every ball hit in their yard. They called our mothers when we did anything, even hit their fence with a stick. They sicked their dogs on us. She looked at her husband for confirmation before she went on. The unwritten rule of the alley was that you had to retrieve the can wherever it went, even on Zilcher's porch. That was scarier than going to the dentist or the principal's office. Right, Jim? Scared cat, Grandpa said, again with the slightest smile. Grandma grimaced. I never imagined them having such good times, Tracey thought to herself. I never thought of grandparents as ever being kids. As if she heard Tracey's thought, Grandma said, It's the sensation part of being a kid I remember best. How I felt. How kick the can excited me. Or other times, hopscotch or jump rope. But I couldn't wait to get out to recess or get the dishes done or get home from the store to get to the good part of my life. Did you ever jump double dutch? Grandma asked Tracey. Tracey shook her head. How can I describe it? Grandma looked past Tracey at the dusky half-lit yard beyond the kitchen window. I can hear that clothesline go thump, thump, making half circles in the sky. Slap, slap, slap on the pavement as we waited for our turn to jump in. It was a challenge, like a high dive, plunging between those two. Sounds like some gold-farmed poet, Grandpa interrupted, without a mollifying smile. Tracey saw her grandmother's enthusiasm fade. Sorry, she excused herself to Tracey. Sometimes I get carried away. I know, Grandma, Tracey said, encouragingly. She liked hearing about her grandparents' young days. There's a line in a poem we had at school, or a phrase, I guess. The achieve of a thing. Some poet called Hopkins. That's what you're talking about. Grandma patted Tracey's hand. Oh, Tracey, that's right. That's what I felt. That's what I don't see kids in this town having. The achieve of a thing. Maybe I just don't see them where they're doing it. I hope so. Maybe, Tracey agreed. She was so tired that she thought she'd sleep 100 years like Rip Van Winkle. I hope you have jump rope times in your life, Tracey. Grandma looked wistful for her granddaughter's well-being. Tracey was too limp with fatigue, too spent from her emotional roller coaster to reassure her grandmother. She thought her passion to know everything about Robert Lincoln's dealings with his deranged mother was like her grandparents' appetite for kick the can. She wasn't sure her grandmother would think her pursuit of Robert Lincoln was healthy. Robert Lincoln is my double Dutch, Tracey decided blearily. But I'm glad I put him out of my mind tonight. What I need is to forget Robert Lincoln and get some sleep. Sleep didn't come that easily. Robert Lincoln turned out to be as demanding as her grandmother's double Dutch. He settled down right inside Tracey's eyelids. As soon as she closed her eyes, she saw his. At first it was just his picture, Robert at Harvard, sour and haunted. To Tracey, he seemed to foresee the trials ahead. I can't sleep for looking at you, Tracey told the shadowy figure in her head. She punched up her pillow and rolled over onto her left side to elude the wraith. This was no help. Now the silent picture of Robert in her head became a talking picture. Robert Lincoln was trying to tell Tracey how it was for him. I don't want you to think I was heartless, he pleaded. I did ask my mother to live with Mary and me after Tad died. But she was impossible, forever calling Mary to task for peccadillos, always figuring out how to get her own way. Mary was so upset, she left me. That's how bad it got. Like a movie on the inside of her eyelids, the sad, unhappy year Robert lived without Mary rolled before Tracey's imagination. Tracey wanted to comfort Robert, but she wanted to sleep even more. She tried opening her eyes to drive his image away. She stared into the darkness until her body couldn't control her tired eyes one more second. Tracey truly wished that life could have been different for Robert Lincoln. She was overwhelmed with what he faced in 1871. But tomorrow, let me think about it tomorrow, she begged, as her eyes closed again. Robert Lincoln wasn't a quitter. He stayed at her shoulder, insisting Tracey listen to the trouble Mary Lincoln made when she came visiting her granddaughter. She insulted the child's mother so nastily that the 7 servants left the room in embarrassment, he said. They couldn't take it. She made her sly criticisms right in front of my little girl, Robert implored, understanding. My mother acted badly. You know what it was like, Robert Lincoln went on. You know how she tried to kill herself. She disgraced me in public. She threw money around. You know I had to do something. I didn't want to put her in a sanatorium. I had to. Tracey threw her head from side to side as if she was saying, no, no, no. But Robert Lincoln wouldn't release her. He had to make her understand what a relief it was when finally he got his mother in good hands in Batavia. I know, Tracey managed to say, and with that he was satisfied. He was finally gone. Tracey's body relaxed. Her breath came regularly and deeply. The pulses cruising across her eyelids calmed. The house silence enveloped her like balm. Tracey dreamed of a golden grove. She was walking down a golden path, burnished cobbles beneath her feet, gentling them, lending them bounce for the next leg of her journey, wherever that might be. Leaves fluttered like aspens in the fall, not with a glint, without hardness, like shimmers of distilled light. At the horizon the sky danced with a billion gold motes, like some benevolent Midas had divided his treasure into 4th of July sparks, or into radiant crumbs that earthly Hansels and Gretels could follow into an interior world or to the centre of the sun. As Tracey walked her golden path, a shadow fell around her, encircling her. She heard a voice, clear, dazzling, gold like the grove, saying, "It is Margaret you mourn for." Tracey roused slowly, reluctantly, unwilling to give up the golden glory of the dream. She was crying again, but it wasn't the heaving, breathless, choking spasms of the morning outburst at Crabtree Orchard. She knew now that she was crying for herself. "It is Tracey you mourn for," she admitted. "Not your mother, not Robert Lincoln, not poor Mary Lincoln. Poor Tracey." The crying was emptying her, but Tracey no longer felt alone. It was as if some freshness of the golden grove lingered inside her, as if she would never lose it again, or at least not completely. "I think I need to know the Tracey Jenner story," she thought. She tried to begin at the beginning, finally brave enough to ask herself when she was first aware of the loneliness that always seemed to be a part of her. She tried to concentrate, to pinpoint, to focus. But once again her body took control. Tracey was finally asleep for the night. Until next time, good night.